Chapter 3, The Treasure of Pelican Cove. Chapter 3 is A Pirate's Tale. Jimmy raced for the house with Blackie at his heels. His shouts brought Granny to the porch. Paul and Elizabeth Ann were right behind her. Even Hiram hurried across the stretch of green lawn, still holding his pruning shears. "What is it, child?" Granny said anxiously. "Are you hurt?" Jimmy shook his head, too out of breath to answer. He could only hold out his hand. They looked at the ball blankly. "Clay?" "No," Jimmy got out. "It's a jewel." He turned the clay. Sunlight glittered off the half-hidden jewel. Granny blinked. She took it from him and held it up to the light. The others examined in wonder as it shimmered with green fire. "An emerald!" Hiram? Granny said in amazement. The old man peered at it. "Huh," he said slowly. A grin spread over his wrinkled face. "I'll be a yellow-backed horned toad if that's not part of old Pegleg's treasure." Pegleg? Treasure? 4 pairs of eyes focused on him. "Is there more? Was he a pirate? I never heard of him." Granny frowned at Hiram. "No one ever proved that a pirate was in these waters. Hiram, if this is one of your stories..." "No, ma'am," Hiram replied indignantly. "I don't make up stories." He stopped under Granny's stern look and then plunged on. "I just embroider them sometimes." "Just let us know which ones are needlework stories then," Granny warned. Hiram looked at her and then replied huffily, "Yes, ma'am." "Pegleg, Hiram," Jimmy said, tugging at Hiram's sleeve. "Tell us about Pegleg." The sparkle came back to Hiram's eyes. He cleared his throat, looked toward the porch. All right, Granny said, sighing. "Come on up." Hiram settled himself in the old wicker rocker. The children gathered around. Granny went into the house to get some lemonade. She gave Hiram a warning look as she passed. "Don't fill these kids' heads with nonsense." "Yes, ma'am," he said meekly, but before she came back, he was well into his story. It was many, many years ago. Old Man Winter was whipping the waves and sending them crashing onto the beach. So a body had to shout to hear himself speak. My granddaddy was walking along the high road up there, heading for home and a warm bed. It was nigh dark, for Granddad had been working late at the shipyard in the harbor. He said he never knew what made him look down at the beach, but he did. There was a small boat pulled up out of the waves, with its sail still dangling. Was it wrecked? Didn't look like it to Granddad, but it looked odd to him that late in the day. So he went closer just to see. What? All he saw was the boat. That and a chest. A wee one, but it was bolted and locked like it held all the treasure in the world. Did it have jewels? Did it have pieces of 8? Jimmy asked eagerly. Well, I don't rightly know. Granddad crept across the sand, keeping a sharp eye out for any strangers. You see, he reached the chest without seeing one soul. But just as he reached down to touch it, bam! Hiram slapped his hands together. What? Elizabeth Ann squealed. Somebody banged him on the back of the head with something heavy. Something like a shovel, Hiram said meaningfully. You mean the pirate was there and was ready to bury the chest? Jimmy asked. And he hit your grandfather? Yep, Hiram said. That's just what Granddad thought when he came to. Well, was it? Never found out, Hiram said. Nothing was there. No boat, no chest, no pirate, but Granddad knew what had happened to him. Sure he didn't trip over his own feet? Granny asked. Now, that's the attitude everybody took, Hiram complained. But that didn't stop Granddad because he saw the tracks leading up the beach right there. He turned to point in the direction of the amusement park. Jimmy shivered with excitement. And those tracks were 1 foot, 1 circle, 1 foot, 1 circle, all the way. A peg leg, Jimmy said. A peg leg, Hiram agreed. But didn't the tracks lead to the treasure chest? Paul asked, puzzled. Well, they did, son, Hiram said, but not right to it. The waves had washed most of the tracks away, and by the time Granddad came back the next morning, the trail was lost in the turn of the tide. And no one ever found the treasure? Elizabeth Ann was wide-eyed. Not even Granddad, Hiram said, though it wasn't from lack of looking. It certainly wasn't, Granny said with disapproval. He spent the rest of his days wandering the beach with a shovel. He dug great holes everywhere, but not a speck of silver did he find. Jimmy didn't hear her. He was lost in thought. A real pirate, right here on our beach. Well, now, Jimmy, Hiram said hastily, it was just like your granny said. Nobody ever got the right or wrong of it. The boat was only seen that one night, and then never again in all the history of Pelican Cove. Jimmy looked at the emerald. But this proves it, he said. Pegleg really was here. But why is the emerald wrapped in clay? Paul leaned over to look again. Why wasn't it in the chest? I don't know, Hiram said thoughtfully. Maybe Pegleg was afraid to leave the chest because he had been seen. Maybe he just emptied part of it into a hidden place, Paul suggested. Excitement grew in Hiram's voice. Yes! Yes! I remember hearing about pirates' catches where small jewels were wrapped in clay and hidden in out-of-the-way places. Then Pegleg's treasure may not have been buried on the beach, Paul said, disgusted. It could be anywhere. No, Hiram's eyes were glowing. Not anywhere. Granddad was only knocked out for a couple of hours. It has to be close. Very close. And we're going to find it, Jimmy shouted. We're going to find the treasure.